Hello, this is Brian Madden with Mission Pinball, and I'm recording this video on February 9th, 2016, and I just want to show off some of the new features of the media controller. That's the graphics system in the upcoming release of Mission Pinball Framework, which is going to be version 0.30. And we're expecting to get this out, maybe it's for beta in March timeframe, and hopefully ready and released in the end of March. The last release of MPF came out on the beginning of December, so I've been sort of heads down for the past 2.5 months working on this new stuff, and I just want to sort of show you some direction where we're going and that kind of thing. So I'm going to show here I've got the config file on the right-hand side. I've got, this is, MPF is actually running, this is the first slide. And so for this config file, so I've got a bunch of comments in here. All the gray stuff is comments, so it looks kind of busy, but there's just a lot of comments in here. So basically, we're going to set up the display. So in the displays section, I've got a default display set up at 800 by 600. I also have a DMD at 128 by 32. And then the main thing in MPF now, you define your slides. So everything on screen is a slide. So here's slide 1 has text, rectangle, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, etc. And then, so I'm just going to go through these and kind of show a little bit. We also have just same like the old version, slide player and a slide player. You've got different events, and the different events play a slide. So I wrote a little scriptlet that just, when I hit the left and right arrow, it just goes through event 1, event 2, event 3. My left arrow goes back to event 2, event 1. So you see, like, event 1 shows slide 1, event 2 shows slide 2, etc. So everything is called widgets now in MPF. So if I go back up to slide 1, which is what's showing now, we've got a widget called text, called I'm the text widget on slide 1 with default settings, which you see here in the center. And then you also have text widget, says hit the right arrow key to continue. The position I did said 33%, so that's sort of sets it this is the Y position. So vertically, that's why this is on the bottom third of the screen. And you can set positions based on percentages or based on like actual pixel numbers. Also, I've got an animation set. This animation is set on the entrance, which means it plays automatically when it comes on, and I'm changing the property value from 0, and then the property value of opacity from 0 to 1, and then repeating that. So that's why you see it flashing. It's a nice, smooth transition between animation events, and you can actually control the formula that's used. So you can specify whether you want linear or parabolic or quadratic or accelerate in, that kind of stuff. So basically, you can animate any property of any widget on the screen. In this case, I'm just animating the opacity between 0 and 1. You also see I've got a widget on the screen here that's a rectangle, it's red, and it's 800 by 600, which is why the background looks red. The order of these widgets in the slide affects the Z order of how they're going to stack on each other. So since the rectangle is on the bottom of this list, then it's on the bottom in the slides. So I'm just going to push the right arrow, which is going to post event number 2, which shows slide number 2. And so here I'll go up and show you what's on slide number 2. Pretty straightforward. There's a widget called text saying I'm slide 2, my font size is 50. See there it says font size 50. I've got text that says hit the right arrow key to continue, my font size is 15. That's actually not true. I think I changed the default now to be 20. See the Y 33%, so that's why it's on the bottom third there. Got a text widget with showing the number 2. This is a font size of 150 with the XY position of 700 and 500. So that's this number 2 up here, and then I've got an ellipse, which is could be a circle, 150, 150, and then XY up here, and the color is dark blue. So a couple things I want to show here is that the coordinates, this is all OpenGL based. So OpenGL puts the pixel 0, 0 is in the bottom left corner. The old Pygame 0, 0 was in the upper right. So we're going to switch to using OpenGL, that's fine. That's what the whole world uses. We'll just have to, as you move your config files, you'll have to sort of change the way that you position things. So the X and Y, though, is this is 0, 0, this is 800, 0, this is 800, 600, and this is 0, 600. And then colors, you can enter those by name, or you can enter them by hex value. And you can also enter opacities here, as I'll show later. So that's slide 2. So I'll push again, move on to slide 3. And then so here you see what's on slide 3, pretty straightforward. I'm text. So notice here's the color. So font size is 50, color is FF0000. So again, that's specified in hex. Then this text here says again, right arrow. I did the positioning based on percentages. Style is typewriter, so I'll show you styles in a second. So see that font? It's like a typewriter font, and that's actually applying a text style to that. And then we've also got this text widget, which says also arrow goes, left arrow goes back, and that's showing that here. Notice there's an animation where I'm animating the X property between 5% and 7% of the screen width. You can set the duration and set repeat. Again, you can animate any property of any widget. I should say you can animate any numeric property of any widget. But going back to the style, typewriter, there's a thing now we support called text styles, which, where are they? Oh, here they are. So I've got a style of default. I set font size to 50. I create a style called chalk, which has font size 50, and then font name is Chalk Duster. I created a typewriter style where the font name is 30. The font size is 30 and the name is Courier New. And you can put anything in these styles. So you can have default colors. You can have anchor, like alignment, like left align, like H align left, right, center, letter spacing, all that kind of stuff you can set in your style. And in your style, you can also override things in the actual slides themselves or in a widget itself. So when you use it, you set the style, but you can still change the color to be something else when you actually put it on the screen. So so that's slide 3. So let me go to slide 4. I'm just kind of showing that this demo is meant to be standalone, so just a bunch more text widgets. You see different colors and different positionings. Just kind of showing negative positions. This thing, there's a line widget, and a line is just points. So it's a point between 100, 250, 100, 350, 700, 350, 700, 250. So it's just drawing a, and then close to close it. So this is just a line around, which is that box there. You could render a line which is hollow. You could also render a rectangle and then put a smaller black rectangle inside it or something. So then just some more text. So now I'm going to go to hit the key again. I'm just going to post the event, event 5, which our slide player sets to play slide 5. And then, hey, here's our first transition. So the widgets on here are probably pretty self-explanatory. There's a text widget that says, hey, that was a transition, font size, color. And then I've got, there's other text in here. The transition was called push, but I actually covered that up with a box. And then I've got 2 rectangles here, a purple rectangle, and this one's purple, and this one is sort of the greenish color again, showing hex versus names. Now notice the slide. There's no transition information in here because the transition is not a property of a slide. A transition is a property of when you show a slide, you show it with the transition. So if I go down to my slide player, where I actually had the event, it was event 5, which I got from hitting the key, which of course needs the event to be anything in your pinball machine. I said, show slide 5, but I said transition push, and that's why it pushed. I can actually go back to the prior one, and then you see it pushes. The new slide pushes the old one out. And in the transition, you can also specify the direction the transition comes from, the speed it runs. There's different transitions, and they all have sort of different properties of how you can control them. You can also apply, again, these easing formulas. So whether you want, how you actually change the value of the animation. Is that going from, is it linear? Is it quadratic? Does it smooth? And does it accelerate? That kind of stuff. So I'll go back to the slides. Okay, so here's slide 5 we're on. So now I'll go hit it. There's slide 6. This one was the rise in transition. So you see kind of cross-faded as it sort of rose in from the back. And again, you can make all sorts of settings there. This slide, I'm just showing off all sorts of different widget options. So there's different shapes. Here's points, which is, points are actually the little dots you see there. And there's the size 3, which is why they're sort of 3 to radius of 3. There's, a line. Bezier curves is this kind of pink thing. Triangle, quad, ellipse, rectangles, rounded rectangles. So I don't think you're going to be building many graphics with these things in your game, but they're good for backgrounds and offsetting text against images and videos and that kind of stuff. So that is that's slide 6. So I'm gonna hit the button again, and there you saw a George Lucas style kind of fade transitions. We'll go to slide 7. So slide 7 has a widget on it, which is a DMD. And so here you see the width is 640 and the height is 160. That's actually the width and height of the DMD widget on our screen. So our screen's 800 by 600 with a 640 by 160 DMD widget. By default, the DMD widget is going to get its content from a display called DMD. So remember at the top, I created a display called a DMD, and then in there, that's where it's 128 by 32. So that's how it knows it's 128 by 32 pixels, even though you're showing it as 640 by 480, or pardon me, 640 by 160. There's all sorts of other settings in here for the DMD, which I'll show in a little bit. I drew a rectangle that's like 1 pixel in each direction bigger, which is why there's the sort of the gray border around it. Put this text on there. Now, so the DMD has content as well. And what's interesting, so here, when all we're doing in slide 7 is adding the actual DMD to this slide. But this isn't actually controlling what is showing on the DMD. The DMD is a separate display. So every time you do a slide player, you specify, when you show some content, when you add a widget to a slide, when you add, show a slide based on an event, if you have multiple displays, like in this case we've got 2, there's the window and there's the DMD, you specify the target. So when I show a slide, what's the target? Is the target the window? Is the target the DMD? Is the target the little on-screen crystal ball, like on playfield crystal ball, whatever that kind of thing is. So I do have a slide here that I call DMD slide, and that slide has an image, which is this jackpot thing that Mike O'Rourke made. This is actually just an animated GIF set to 20 frames per second, and it just loops by default. So we're actually showing 2 slides right now. We're showing the DMD slide on the DMD display. Then we're showing the slide 7 on our main window, but the main window also has a DMD widget on it that's showing the DMD content, if that makes sense. And then so our slide player, if I go down here, what I put in the slide player is when I push when event 7 was posted, 2 things happened. It put slide 7 into our default display, and remember it had that George Lucas style wipe transition, and then I also put the DMD slide inside to the DMD display. Probably in a real game, you're not going to be, having events or changing things on 2 displays. You might, but ordinarily you'd probably only be working with like 1 display target at a time. But the point is that the DMD, showing a DMD on a slide, that's just another widget, just like anything else. And you can move, you can resize, you can animate it, you can set transparencies and all this kind of stuff. So let me go back up to where I was, slide 7. So I'm going to go on to now slide 8. And in slide 8, it's actually the same DMD widget, but just look, I added the property green. And I also changed the pixels. So now the pixel, I changed the blur radius and the pixel size. So you might notice these pixels are a little bit bigger and closer together and like kind of blurrier. So there's all sorts of settings you can set for like how the dots are rendered, how big the pixels are, what the color is, spacing in between them, like how dark they are when they're off, all that kind of stuff. So then you see this. So what I did, so the DMD slide didn't change. The DMD display this entire time is playing this jackpot loop. And all that's different is on this slide 8 now, we added a widget to that slide which renders the DMD differently than it did before. Again, I don't know that you would necessarily do this in a game. I'm just kind of showing the different sort of options you have. So go on to slide 9. And now you notice I removed the dot filter. So slide 9, again, same DMD, green, this kind of stuff. But I added dot filter false. So see, now we don't have the circles being rendered over it. Now it's still pixelated because the DMD is 128 by 32, right? So it's showing a 128 by 32 image that's now blown up to the 640 by 160 or whatever it is. You can actually set different smoothing values too, so if you want to like smooth the pixels and anti-aliasing and that kind of stuff. But all I did here is just kind of turn off the dot filter. And then I'm going to go on to slide 10. And now I added another setting on the DMD where I said shades is 4. So I took the DMD, it was, by default, it does 16 shades. So it'll take a full color image you have, convert it to grayscale, using like the right luminance, formulas and everything. And you can actually customize the luminance formula it uses to convert it to grayscale as well. And by default, the DMD shows 16 shades. But if you want to emulate like WPC style or whatever, I set this to 4 shades, and now it's like black is included in a shade, so we get like 3 shades of green plus black. So now I'll go on to slide 11, and now we've got the color DMD. So the difference here is this is a different widget. Before, in slide 10, the widget I was adding was the widget called DMD. This is actually a color DMD widget. But again, the color DMD widget, it's still getting its content from the DMD. So the DMD display, at no point did this ever change since this demo began. Like DMD is just running, this animated GIF over and over and over again. And it's just that as I'm showing different slides in the main window, I'm adding different widgets on, kind of pointing back to that same display. I could put these all on the screen at the same time, all getting their source from the same display. But now I set it as a color DMD, and same width and height, same blur, pixel size. I can also apply gain. I can do color. I can tint this. I can change pixel size. I can change contrast and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, if you had a physical DMD connected, both mono or RGB LED DMD, you can adjust all the color gains, and you can actually adjust the color and everything separately from the physical one versus the on-screen one. So let's go on to slide 12. And now on slide 12, so you see 1, 2, 3. And there's 3 separate widgets on the slide. What these widgets are, these are widgets called slide frames. And a slide frame widget is a widget that actually holds other slides. Think of it kind of like picture-in-picture. And so this is an example for like Wizard of Oz, how you would, they've kind of got the 4-up display where there's like, a 2x2 grid in the center where they have like 4 sort of like littler like frames within the display for individual modes and that kind of stuff. And then there's like a parent one kind of around it. So in this case, this slide 12, which is on the display, has the widget is called slide frame, and you have to give each of your frames a name, because remember I said everything is that you do with the display is targeted in MPF. So you have, like when you're playing a slide or adding a widget, it can go to the default, which I've set as my window as a default. You can make the default whatever you want. So you specify basically, does that content play on the window or the DMD? If you only have one display, you never have, it's your default. You never have to worry about targeting. But in this case, when I give it a name, so my left frame is 200 by 600, my center frame is 400 by 600, and my right frame is 200 by 600. And so these have names. So now these are target names. So now I actually have 5 targets in this machine that I can just, like 5 display targets. I've got the window, I've got the DMD, I've got the left frame, I've got the center frame, and I've got the right frame. But these frames are actually on this slide. So the frames kind of exist logically in space, and you can put them like on an actual slide, as I did here. And then for the initial content, by the way, I've got a left slide 1, which is text showing just the number 1 with the style chalk. The center slide 1 is text with showing the number 2 with chalk, and the right slide is text showing 3. So I actually have 4 slides that I'm showing right now. I'm showing the frame. I'm showing the window has a slide that has 3 frames on it, and then each frame has 1 slide that it's showing. And again, if I go down to my slide player, when event 12 happened, see there's 4 dashes here, it actually showed 4 slides. It showed slide 12. There's no target because it went in the default, but it showed left slide 1 on left frame, it showed center slide 1 on center frame, and it showed right slide 1 on right frame. So that's what we have. Where were we? That's what we're kind of showing now. So now on the next one, all these independent, these frames are separate display targets. So I'm going to now hit a button that's going to advance. It's going to have each of these guys, each frame, do a slide transition. And so there we go. So now each of them is showing new slides. So if you look at here, it's I've got left slide 2, center slide 2, and right slide 2. And so left slide 2 has an ellipse, green ellipse on a yellow rectangle. Center one has a pink ellipse on a orange rectangle, and the right one has the red ellipse on the blue rectangle. What's cool with the positioning is that all the coordinates within an actual slide frame are localized. So if you center something, like when you're displaying to a frame, it essentially has its own coordinate space, and you don't have to worry about where it is in the overall screen. You can actually move them around and resize them and everything, and you just put your widgets and video and images and text and all that kind of stuff on that frame and position it within the frame, and then it's sort of shown properly. So I can actually go back to the previous slide and then sort of do that again, and you see that, so here, going back, the 3 frames are still there. What actually happened is now I'm just changing, I'm doing slide transitions on each of those 3 frames at once. And if I go down to the slide player, you see what I did here. This is on left frame, the left slide 2 I'm showing in the left frame with the transition moving in from the left. The center slide 2 I'm showing in the center frame with the transition moving in from the top. And the right slide 2 I'm showing in the right frame with the transition moving in from the bottom. And so that's how, if I go back, and do that again, you see they move in that way. Notice here, the parent didn't change. So all this time, I've actually been changing slides of the parent in the window, and like in the previous step, I changed the parent to slide 12, and I changed, I also changed these slide frame displays. But now I didn't change the parent. So our parent window is still showing slide 12. It didn't change. It's just that the 3 slide frames it showed, the slides actually changed inside there. And then the next one you're going to see, when the next event happens, it only changes out the center one, and it does a swap transition. So I'll do that, and then you see it does that. That's the swap transition. And if I go back up here to what that one is, the center slide 3, I've got an ellipse, I've got an image, and I've got another ellipse. And I'm just kind of showing like this image is a PNG, so it's transparent. So the gray ellipse underneath it, and you can see that this Mission Pinball logo sticks out across it. I set the opacity also. So look at the this yellow one. I did FF00, which is yellow. But then for the opacity, I set AA, which is like whatever. I don't know what that math is. It's 75% or something like that. Of transparency, so that's why you see that it's on top of things, but it's kind of showing through. So again, all I did in this one on my slide player down here is I just swapped out center slide 3. So I just swapped out that center one, so the parent one is still the same, the other ones are still the same. You just change that. And so that's just showing that like these are actual. And I go back, I go forward, and these are showing that these slide frames are actual. Sort of standalone, what I want to call it, like, sort of just display targets. Okay, so then on the next one, we're going to show video. And if I show the video here, I just shot this myself, and I've got Widget on video with the transparency above it. So this is, I was looking for like free videos, and I didn't, like there was no good ones really, so I just like shot a quick one. That's the Mission Pinball framework. That's my office. But what I want to show is, so I've got the video, and I've got 3 widgets here. And so there's a text widget called Widget on Video, which is font size. I did it bold. I've got a rectangle, which is black with some opacity, and position that. So again, the Z ordering of all this stuff is based on the order it's in here. So this Widget on Video text is the highest thing, then the rectangle's underneath it, and the video is underneath that. And for animations, I also entered an animation event to animate the opacity to 0, and that's event number 16. So when I hit the button again, that'll fade away to 0. And by the way, I could do that like while the video is playing, and that's fine. So anyway, so that's a quick overview of what the sort of MPF graphics system is going to be like. What video formats are supported? This is now, it uses libraries based on SDL2 and GStreamer. So basically, whatever plugins you have for those on your system, you can be supported. So you can go to the GStreamer website and download all sorts of plugins and different codecs and that kind of stuff. So pretty close to any video type, any image type, animated images. It's whatever plugins are available for these libraries, which these are very popular libraries, much more popular than Pygame that we used before. So they've got plugins that basically make everything work. So this whole thing looks kind of complex. I'm showing a lot of things just sort of randomly, but you build it up bit by bit. Like you just build a slide, add widgets to the slide, set Z ordering. I didn't show a lot of things. You can actually put widgets in the display itself to kind of ride on top of slides, so you can have like slides moving back and forth underneath widgets to stay put. So you could have like a message on the screen like that pops up with, even if you're transitioning slides underneath it. You can also reuse widgets. So I also didn't show that. I started creating one. You can create an entry called widgets and then create like groups of widgets and then put those widgets on the frame. So that way, if you have like a common scoring or some kind of common widget that you want to use on a bunch of different slides, you can sort of define it as a widget or a named widget group and then use that on any slide. Also, all the text I had here is hard-coded because I don't actually have MPF running. I'm just running the media controller standalone. But all the text here, you can put placeholder variables in there. You can have string lookups. So if you want to have different languages or different like sensitivity ratings, like the adult version and family-friendly version, you can add all your text with just string lookups to a file that holds all the text strings. You can show dynamic text based on any player variable or machine variable or like timers and all this kind of stuff, and that stuff all updates sort of automatically. So this is what we've got so far for the display in MPF 0.30, which will be coming out in a few months. And so yeah, thanks for your time. I'm excited about this release. Everything seems to be pretty decent and working as planned. And we're gonna make lots and lots of examples like this you can play with. We actually have this little demo player that I wrote included in the package. So if you just want to play with standalone slides and start kind of setting it up and things like that, you can do that here. So long-term vision is for us to actually create like a GUI sort of slide editor, but that's probably years down the road. So for now, it's going to be this text-based stuff. But when you build it up kind of bit by bit by bit, it's not as daunting as kind of looking at everything at once. So anyway, thank you so much and happy pinballing.